Adam King, and I am the star of my own TV show, Adam Loves Adventures. It is great to see kids like me on TV with disabilities. Now, I've gathered some program makers like you guys to talk about why this is important. Over to the grown-ups.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Atkinson. I'm the creator and the executive producer of Mix Mups, which is a new preschool animation show for Milkshake on Channel 5. The show has got 2 disabled characters. It's about 3 little friends that live together and like mixing up objects in a magical mixing box, and it also explores their different personalities that are based on different preschoolers' play styles. The show is disabled led by me. I am partially sighted and partially deaf, and so it's a really fun show, and it's going to be one of the first animated TV shows to have 2 lead disabled characters and be disabled led.
I'm Debbie MacDonald, and I am the head writer on Mix Mups. And Rebecca and I came together about 6 years ago. As she's already mentioned, the actual show is disabled led. So every single person involved in the production either has a disability or lived experience of disability. And we're about to go into production, and I'm incredibly proud to be the head writer.
I'm Gary Timpson. I'm the managing director of Cavalier Productions and executive producer on Adam Loves Adventure, which is a space-themed preschool show featuring Adam King as the hero, traveling through space with his friends, solving the environmental issues of all space aliens around the world, and bringing that message back to our own planet, where we can all learn from what Adam finds out and how he helps others.
I'm David King, and I am Adam King's dad. And as Gary mentioned, Adam is the star of a new Irish animation, which is actually the first Irish animation where the hero is a wheelchair user. And we're incredibly proud of Adam, and we're hugely delighted to be associated with Cavalier for this absolutely incredible production that represents difference in all the ways that is so important to us as a family. That is important to Adam as well. It's important to say that it's important to him as a 7-year-old child. He has a strong sense of why it's important to him, and he absolutely loves it, and we love it, and we're so excited about it, and I'm thrilled to be here to represent and speak on behalf of the family.
Back in 2015, I began something called the Toy Like Me campaign, where basically I noticed that there was absolutely no representation of disability in toys, and that there were 150 million disabled kids worldwide, but that these well-known toy brands were not representing children at all. And it was at this point that I kind of really realised that there was something here, and there was this huge untapped well of representation that the mainstream were not serving. And so it got to the point where I was like, oh, I'm getting a bit like frustrated here. I've got a bit of a bruise on my forehead from banging my head on the brick wall. I'm just gonna make a show.
And we did, and it took 6 years, and we've had so many highs and so many lows, haven't we? Where we go, oh my God, this is actually going to happen. And then something happens and you go, it's never going to happen. And actually, we were really lucky with the YAC Fund as well, because that obviously gave us a massive opportunity. And here we are, finally in production with a broadcaster.
When Andrew, my business partner, Andrew Kavanagh from Cavalier, was watching the Late Late Toy Show, it was the first time he saw Adam, and the way he spoke about what he wanted to be. He wanted to be at Capcom, how much he loved space, and what he wanted to do when he grew up. And it just inspired Andrew to come up with the idea that this story needs to be told.
Well, I think the initial thing about Adam loving to be a Capcom or mission commander in Mission Control comes from, when he was younger, he'd play Capcom with his brother, and his brother would be the astronaut and things like that. And I think, and it's very heartfelt actually, that the role of the Capcom is to keep the crew safe. So when his brother goes into space, he'll keep him safe. That was his hope. So, and I think that really reflects a central quality of Adam that comes into the show.
And this is what really, kind of got Andrew quite emotional on the day. And he came back to the studio and said, look, we got to do something here. We got to make this, we got to get this message. And as an animation studio, we are in a space where we tell stories for a living. So this story needs to be told.
I love that idea that stories and shows should celebrate children. And I think that's really, really important. Visibility really does matter. For Adam, just touching on the Christmas special that we did, one of my favourite scenes from it was when Adam just wheels across the floor in his wheelchair, and he says to Frizzle the Frazzling, he says, "I'm Adam, and what are you doing to our son?" And it's just Adam as Adam. And I remember seeing him. We actually held a premiere of it in our local cinema in our local town, and Andrew and Gary came to the premiere with their families. And I remember a moment, I looked at Adam watching that for the first time, and I looked across at Andrew looking at Adam watching it for the first time, and we caught each other's eye. And it was a moment when we realized Adam had seen himself as himself in his most positive way of being on screen. And he had actually said something. He was on the Late Late Show again, previous to the launch of the Christmas special, and the host asked him, what's one of his favorite things about the cartoon? This is what Adam said, and this just again highlights this stuff is not lost on young people, and it's important in terms of celebrating them, and because everyone wants to be like their heroes that they see on TV and that they read about. Adam said,
"When children all over the world who use wheelchairs see that the hero of the cartoon uses a wheelchair, then they'll see that they can be a hero in their lives too."
Now Adam's 7. Now he's a wise 7-year-old, wise beyond his years, but he has that sense himself of how important that is. And he knows how important it is for children like him to be celebrated like any other child on screen.
Off the back of that, a story about myself when I was young, which is an indication I now realise retrospectively of what happens to children when they are invisible. But when I was about probably Adam's age, actually, so I had 2 hearing aids, and I had this had this bedroom window that went out onto a flat roof, and I had that fear that one day somebody would climb through the window and carry me out into the night. But I had this plan, and the plan was that I was going to say to them, no, you don't want me, I've got hearing aids. And at that point in my 7-year-old brain, that person was going to put me down and leave. And I believed that the hearing aids were going to protect me because they wouldn't want me. And I think that obviously now I don't think that, I'm much older, but there was no one on TV with hearing aids. There was nobody with disabilities visible anywhere. And although my parents were constantly saying you're fabulous and you can do anything and all the rest of it, society, which as children's industries we are part of, was reflecting a very different message. It was reflecting silence. And if you reflect that silence and you don't show disabled children will make up their own minds about their worth, and that becomes the outcome. And so I see this with Toy Like Me. We only have to show a child with a cochlear implant a picture of Tinkerbell with a cochlear implant that we've created, and it shifts their perception of who they are.
And also, it's not just about representation of, disabled kids on screen for themselves. It's about other kids to see disabled kids on screen too. Because when they don't see them, they think there's something strange about them and there's something different. So we need to change that mindset too.
Outside of Mixed Moxie, so we've worked with researchers from Queen Margaret's University in Edinburgh to measure the impact of showing non-disabled people positive disability imagery and disabled toys. And we've just finished the study there where we found that their friendship attitudes improve afterwards. So we have them write a story about a disabled character before exposure. We expose them to images and toys, and then we have them write a story about a disabled character after exposure. And those stories are very, very markedly different. And what we're finding in the second set of stories is that their friendship intentions are rising, and they're talking about the disabled character in a completely different way. So we know that it works. It's just a case of making those shifts within the industry to actually put those things on screen and into shops and whatever in terms of disabled toys. So
this is something that we as producers need to look at, and how can we change this, but also the mindset of the financiers and broadcasters as well needs to step up as well in terms of the shows they're putting out there and why these shows are so important.
I've seen this so many times in my own work. I work in education and in schools and that, and I see so many times that interventions happen when there's a problem. So, for example, maybe there isn't enough of an uptake of maybe girls that want to do certain subjects in school. So we introduce an intervention to improve uptake, or there's a drop off in our international standards in maths. So we put an intervention to solve a problem. Wouldn't it be brilliant if, rather than focusing on a problem, that broadcasters and everyone focused on a desired future and wanting to have a nice desired future, because that it is a positive future and a reflective of society where difference is just there. And I think, like my own community, I see it with Adam's friends in school. They are growing up with difference as just there. And I don't believe they have those trappings of that child is great because they're in a chair or because they have a difference. They're just great because they're a great kid, and wouldn't it be a fantastic, future to aim towards, where we are just aiming towards it because it's a good thing, not because we have a problem? Shouldn't we just strive to a better future?
Yeah, I mean, that's very well put, David, because it's so important that, it is something that needs to happen. As you said, it's changing the mindset for good, So it just changes and moves forward instead of changing for a set period until it just goes off the boil, for want of a better description. And then it just doesn't happen for years and years and years. That can't happen. It has to be this continuous, like when you're pitching a show. If the show's good enough, it should go on air regardless, and we can't let it slip. We really can't. And as I said, 5 years from now, hopefully it's just a norm. It just is,
I agree. I mean, that's the danger. You don't want broadcasters to say, oh, well, we've got one of those. I mean, I can't begin to tell you over the years that we've been pitching this show that we've been labelled that show, and because the show just happens to have disabled characters in. But, Rebecca and I were very keen to make sure that this show was pitched as disabled led, but not about disability. So it's just a fun show. And if you took the disabled characters out, it would still be a fantastic show. So we need to make sure, we need to strive for more shows like this in the future, and that we are not just box ticking for broadcasters.
I think that's really, really important, because a lot of the parents and the disabled people that I've worked with over the years, and I've been working in this field for a long time, I've met a lot of people, and people just say, I just want to be seen as normal, because we talk about disability as a kind of other, but actually disabled people, all that is natural human variation. It's like we talk about it as if disabled people are some sort of group over there. I'm disabled, and it's like it's no big deal. It's still within media circles an elephant in the room that people tiptoeing around because they're not quite sure how to talk about it. But actually, it's like the elephant in the room actually is me, and that's fine, and that's totally fine. And I'm a big happy elephant dancing around in my tutu. I do think that we have to get over that awkwardness. We have to start realising that actually we talk about this dry thing called disability. Oh God, oh poor them. Oh, actually, what it is, you would reframe it. It's an untapped well of creativity. It's an untapped well of stories. If you start to enable disabled programme makers to tell their own stories, what you will find is stuff that blows your mind, because it's different and it comes from a completely different angle, and it's not the narratives that you're used to, and it is fresh.
Well, everything you said there really resonates with me as a parent, as Adam's dad, and you're right. Everyone wants the world to see their children as they see them. And it was actually one of my greatest hopes on the night of the toy show was that the world would get to see Adam the way he was. A really kind child with a big heart, and the world did get to see that. But also, and he is those things, regardless of being in a wheelchair and having a brittle bone condition. But not to deny the fact that he is also a wheelchair user. It's part of his identity. It's so much part of his identity, actually, that his chair actually has an identity. His chair is called Speedy, and Speedy is actually a character in Adam Loves Adventure. So his chair is a big part of his identity, and he's a proud wheelchair user, and we're proud of him as a wheelchair user. And But the other thing is, I think you're so right in what you said about having that untapped well of seeing things and doing things differently. And like in Adam's case, I think that's another big part of his qualities. Like Adam plays sports. He's probably one of them. He's as sporty, if not more sporty, than all of my kids. He does dance as well, and he plays wheelchair soccer, everything. But he does, he approaches problems in a different way. And I think Gary and Andrew and the writers, they took that quality of Adam's, that real life quality that he sees and thinks about things in a different way, and have applied that to his character in the show. So that's just a fantastic example of how, if you embrace the fact that people who are different might think or act or see things differently, you're right, you can get a really creative, untapped resource there.
I'm going to say that's the mantra for Mix Mups. There's always another way. Because one of the things that Rebecca has said all along is actually, why fix the child? Why not fix the environment around? The child is the child. And actually, why should the child change? But, something that you said there as well, David and Rebecca, is that, that totally resonated with me when, my daughter was born. So many people would come up to me and say, what's wrong with her? And actually, I started to stop getting really angry about it, because I thought they just don't know. They don't know how to talk about disability. They're trying to engage me in a conversation. They're trying to show that they care. And actually, it's not their fault. That's how they've always approached it. So, and I think that's why a lot of people don't talk about disability, because they actually don't know how to.
I get this all the time. I use a guide dog, and I get people coming up and saying to me, you don't look blind. And I'm like, I'm trying to have lunch with my friends. I don't want to talk to a stranger about how blind I look. I don't want those sort of intrusive. And the thing is, each of those individual people is just a curious person. And there's nothing wrong with curiosity. But when you are the object of curiosity and you are asked several times each day, then you start to get a bit annoyed. And it's no one's fault. We all get our information from society around us, or books or media or newspapers or whatever. And so the narratives that are in those media are informing the minds of those people, who then come and talk to people like Debbie and go, what's wrong with your kid? You can change that cycle in the media by putting different narratives into the media for people to internalise and then externalise in the real world. And that's what we want to do with Mix Mups, is that we want to be able to say, we want those parents who've just had a child with a disability, we want them to turn on Milkshake, and we want them to know that somebody has made a show that celebrates their child. Or not necessarily, because we can't represent every impairment on the planet. I mean, we'd be here for a million years because there's so much human variation. But what we can do is represent the culture of disability. And there is a disability culture, because we're talking about it here.
Yeah.
The shared affinities that we've all got, where I say something or David said something and go, oh, yeah, I know that. That is disability culture. And that is what we want to reflect. So in Mix Mups, all the stories end with a catchphrase that is, there's always another way. So I don't travel all around the country because it's quite difficult for me with a guide dog to navigate new places. So we do all of our production meetings on Zoom, and that's our other way. And there is always another way, but you have to have flexible thinking. I think within the media, the pandemic has helped a lot, actually, because everyone was disabled by the pandemic. Nobody could go anywhere. And that is the social model of disability, where it's not actually about you, it's about the environment. And I can't access the environment. And in COVID, it was because we had restrictions put on us. For disabled people, we also have restrictions put on us by a library with no ramp, or by a cinema with no subtitles. Those are restrictions that are being put on us. And that is the social model. That is about fixing the environment rather than fixing the child.
Actually, as we're developing all of these stories for Mix Mups, they are not your traditional stories that you would get in preschool television, because they are coming from different experiences. So it is all about, educating the commissioner. And luckily, we've got a fantastic broadcaster who's working with us on this and understanding of this, but that the stories are told in a different way. When we've been looking at the writing team, we wanted to be really clear that everybody involved had lived experience of disability. There are lots of disabled writers out there, but they've not worked on kids' TV before. So we've been nurturing them. We've worked with them separately. You know, our writers have a disability, so we adapt to their needs. We don't run traditional writers' rooms. We have a very small team. And we think that works. So many shows have, you know, many, many writers across all the episodes, but we just can't have that. We have to be a very, very small community to get this right. And it's also about changing the broadcasters' perceptions of, you know, who are the usual writers out there that they want to use. Actually, no, because we're telling stories in a different way, and you have to understand the way in which these stories are being told. You have to live that experience.
If you want to reflect these disability culture on screen, you do have to employ people who identify as disabled behind the screens, and there are barriers in place which stop people being able to enter the industry, or more crucially, stay in the industry. And so one of the ways around that is very flexible thinking. So this is a creative industry, right? We're used to creative thinking, but somehow that creative thinking, when it comes to the business structures, falls out the window, because we think, oh, we've always done it this way. We always have a writer's room this way. This is the way it's done. And as a result, those structures don't fit everybody. And so those people who might want to might have massive amount of talent. They've got the untapped well of talent, but they can't get through the door. So what we have to do is move the door into their house, so that, you know, and make it on Zoom. And there is the front door on your computer screen, and all those barriers have been removed, and then you can access that untapped well of talent and start to draw those stories out of them.
Season 2. Quite simply, I think that's, you know, because we spoke about this offline as well. It's not just a case we make the show and we head off into the sunset, you know, and it's been, you know, inspiration for me, you know, just to hear what you guys are doing. And I think it's, you know, boiling that down, and how can you share that with the people who can make your show happen, and also understand, as we mentioned earlier, that there's great stories. All our peers in the business who all have great shows. Our shows are as great, you know, and need to be on the same.
Yeah.
It's basically a level playing field here is what we're looking at. And the same with Adam Loves Adventure. It's a great show, and I keep going back to that. It's that's what we're selling. You know, this is what we're selling, a great show first and foremost, and not to go, as Debbie mentioned earlier, is like, oh, it's that show. You know, it's a great show, but it's also that show. You know, it's not that show, it's a great show. That would be the key message I would put out there, that it's the shows we're producing warrant the attention like that any other show gets, not being that show, as Debbie said, you know.
Yeah.
I hope that in 5 years' time, Mixmups will have created a bit of a reference point for other shows.
Yeah.
Part of the difficulty with getting Mixmups commissioned was that it is so different, and it doesn't have a reference point. It's really difficult for me to say, oh, well, it's a bit like this, and it's a bit like that show, and, you know, it's sort of like this, because it's not really like anything. And that's what I mean by untapped creative waters, really. And I hope that Mixmups will kind of break through and make it easier for people, you know, 4, 5, 6, 10 years down the line to create shows that have got disabled characters in them, or maybe that reflect disability culture, but that they don't find it so difficult to kind of climb over that paradigm shift and to get people to see the world a little bit differently. So that's my hope for Mixmups.
I hope that we've nurtured these writers to the point where they are on the top of everybody's writing list. And, you know, and they're in the industry, they love what they're doing, and they're working across productions in kids' TV forevermore.
My hope would be that in the coming years that Adam gets to find his voice as the actor of his own character in his show, that he gets to represent himself as himself, with a child with great empathy, a wise young man, and that he gets to be a positive role model for all children. And most importantly, that he has great fun doing it, because it is great fun and he has really, really enjoyed the journey so far. I mean, who wouldn't want to be their own character in their own awesome cartoon where they get to travel the universe? It's so cool.
Thank you for all your great thoughts and ideas. I hope this have left you excited about Adam Loves Adventure and mix-em-ups. The future starts now, and it's up to you where we go next. Bye!